Welcome to the Leadership Intelligence Podcast. Today we'll be discussing the release of the book Engagement Magic: 5 Keys for Engaging People, Leaders, and Organizations. My name's Charles Rogel, and I'm a senior consultant here at DecisionWise and Vice President of Product Development. I'll be moderating our podcast today, but our presenter and joining me is Dr. Tracy Maylett.
Hi, Charles.
Tracy is the CEO of DecisionWise. He holds a doctorate degree in organization change from Pepperdine University. He's the author of the book Engagement Magic, which we'll be discussing today, and also the co-author of another book, The Employee Experience: How to Attract Talent, Retain Top Performers, and Drive Results. So today we're going to talk about the release of the upcoming book, Engagement Magic, which is a follow-up to the first book that came out back in 2014, titled similarly, Magic: 5 Keys to Unlock the Power of Employee Engagement. So why the follow-up now 4 years later?
Oh, yeah. We get asked that question quite a bit. So first of all, our book, Magic: 5 Keys to Unlock the Power of Employee Engagement, was a big hit. And the reason that is I think, because it resonated with people. It resonated with individuals. It resonated with organizations, understanding that, engagement creates an environment in which we can really excel in what we do. And nobody shows up at work in the morning and says, I hope today's an awful day.
Yeah.
They really do want to be engaged. And so it had some resonance with individuals and organizations. And as we continued over the last 4 years, so it was 2014 when we originally released the first Magic book, we realized that there has been some change that's happened. When we also wrote another book that was called The Employee Experience, and in that book, one of the things we noted is that we have now moved to what we refer to as the age of the employee, to where the employee has a lot more choices than they did previously. Mm-hmm. When we wrote the book in 2014, we were still stinging from a poor economy worldwide, and things had just started to change. And now employees do have these options that they may not have had before, and so engagement is even more important than it was. So to make a long story short, what we did is we took this book and we said, what has changed in the last 4 years, or what additional information do we have? So the original book was based on 14 million data responses. Okay, mm-hmm. So data points, and that went into this research. It's very heavily research-based. And then we took that and we more than doubled that database, in fact. So it's now up to 32 million survey responses. And from that, we learned additional things. So this additional information is included in here in the new release of the book.
And these are responses to employee engagement surveys that were conducted with companies around the world.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. Around the world. I believe it was 70 plus countries.
Okay.
Yeah, so a number of different organizations. And we learned a lot. And we learned a lot in this last 4 years. We've updated a number of the case studies, so we have new case studies that are in there. I would say the book is probably 25-30% different than what it was in the past.
Okay.
But I think the biggest piece of that was we made some discoveries. We made the discovery of who actually owns engagement in an organization.
Yeah.
We had CEOs coming to us that we've worked with over a long period of time saying, okay, we're implementing these things to create a culture of engagement, but still one of the things we're finding is that the employee still needs to choose to engage. This
right.
isn't just us. And so what we've done in this new release is include a lot of information about that role that I need to take in order to engage myself in there as well.
Okay. And so we're still using the acronym MAGIC in the book, and MAGIC standing for meaning, autonomy, growth, impact, and connection as the drivers of engagement. But what more have you added or learned about this acronym since the original release?
Well, we've learned a few things on that one. First of all is the importance of a manager or a supervisor in creating that environment in which MAGIC exists. So the MAGIC acronym we found is even more supported than it was in the past. Mm-hmm. MAGIC stands for meaning, autonomy, growth, impact, and connection. And what we found is that it's been pretty clear that perks don't create engagement. So yet what we're trying to do in today's environment is out-perk the perker. And that's been an interesting challenge because what happens is we're just adding more and more perks, and that's not creating engagement. What has happened in the last 4 or 5 years is that we're seeing that these 5 components, these 5 keys, really are the keys to creating an engaged environment.
Mm-hmm. So the research is playing out as you're studying it more.
Oh, there's no question. It's more amplified than it ever has been before.
So in between the first release, so Magic back in 2014, and this book, there's another book you wrote called The Employee Experience. And this one was a bestseller, so it topped the charts both on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. In fact, on Barnes & Noble, it was the best-selling business book, period, for the first 2 weeks that it was released. And so why do you think this book about the employee experience was such a success? And then what's the tie between this book and Engagement Magic?
Well, the employee experience is really based not just on engagement. It was, what is my true experience as an employee? All those perceptions I have about what I'm going through in my work environment. In that book, we talk about 3 contracts. We call it the brand contract, the transactional contract, and the psychological contract that really do create the environment in which I can choose to engage.
Yeah.
And so with Magic, what we've done is we've really narrowed this down to the concept of, okay, what does create this engagement? All right. So the employee experience is based on a number of different factors, one of those being engagement. What really does create that level of engagement? That's really, as I mentioned before, resonated with people. They can take this acronym and say, as an individual, do I have these 5 keys in my life? It applies outside of the work environment as well. But as a leader, I can look at these 5 keys and say, how can I make sure that these 5 keys exist within my organization and create that environment? That's something that's easy to understand. It's something I can get my arms around as a manager or as an employee, and something I can actually act on. And I think that's really what's resonating with people. I can take these and act on these and create that in the organization.
Okay. And so there's a lot of new concepts that you're introducing in this new release. And one that stands out is this idea about engaging people. And so I wanted you to describe kind of what it means to engage people as opposed to maybe this concept of owning your own engagement.
Yeah, this goes back to one of the key findings since 2014. What we've learned is that engagement isn't just a feeling. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've seen a big movement lately with the happiness concept. Happiness concept is great. It says I'm happy at work, I'm happy in my work, I'm happy with life. And that's wonderful, but in addition to that, there's more to engagement. Engagement says I both feel and do. Okay, so I can feel something. I can feel like I enjoy this work environment, but does that cause me to act or do anything based on it? So we took that and we explored it a lot more and did a lot more research on that. So one of the sections that we've added into this book, new information, is that engagement is a competency. A competency can be learned, it can be developed, I can train on it, I can hold people accountable for it. So I can actually hold people accountable for the engagement competency. Now, the concept of engaging people really comes from this thought. Engaging people, the word engaging is both an adjective and so the adjective describes me as an individual, but it's also a verb. It means that I'm actually causing something to happen. So let's look at the word engaging. Engaging, for example, we use as an adjective. Charles, you are an engaging person. I mean that sincerely. You have the ability to bring others on, and there's something about you that's just engaging. Okay, so that describes an adjective.
Yeah.
There's also the verb. The verb says I do something that causes something to happen, right? It's I am engaging. I am bringing you along. So because you are an engaging individual, the adjective, you're also engaging other people. You're causing other people to come along with you in that engagement.
Infecting people with my virus.
It really is. In fact, we have a section in there that's called Engagement is Viral.
Uh-huh.
And we really do find that that's the case. In fact, one of the things that we recently pulled out in this research that we've added into this, if I am engaged as a manager, the people around me are far more likely to be engaged as well.
Yeah.
In fact, the number is 213% or more likely to engage. So you as my manager, if you are engaged, there's a 213% more likely chance that the people that are working with me will engage in their role as well.
Wow.
That's a huge finding, because what it does say is that managers, just the fact that they are engaged, they're doing something that creates environments in which people can choose to engage.
Yeah.
So that's one of the new findings, that whole concept of engaging people, engaging leaders, engaging organizations. It's both a verb and an adjective.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, we always assume that, if you had a manager who's engaged, you're more likely to be engaged, but quantifying it by that much makes a huge difference
That's
in the
huge.
workforce.
What it does is say, manager, you have a responsibility here, and a lot of this engagement factor does tie back to you. So what the book does is show managers how they can create that, how they can be engaging.
Yeah. So first, engage thyself before engaging
That's
other
exactly it. In fact, part of it is talking about disengaged team. Look first in the mirror.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Excellent. So give me an idea of who the audience is for this book. Who were you writing to?
Well, this book is written actually kind of for three different levels. It goes back to that engaging people concept. The one level is the organizational level, right? So the first book, Magic, that we wrote was really focused on the organizational level. So how does the organization create the environment in which people can choose to engage?
Yeah.
That book was written to basically any employee, but more focused on the leadership level. So it was focused on senior leaders in the organization and managers in the organization. This book, one of the changes is that we've written it to three levels. One is the organization itself. So how do I create that environment in which people can choose to engage? The next level is the interpersonal level or team level, and that is how do we create teams that are engaging teams? What these engaging teams work well together. They practice the magic concepts. Things like that. And then finally, this is the big change, and it's written at the individual level as well.
Okay.
It says, how do you as an individual own your own level of engagement? We find that engagement, and this is a big piece of what we've also found in the last 5 years, is that engagement is a 50-50 proposition. So the organization and the environment and the manager can own 50% of that equation, but the individual has to also choose to engage. And what CEOs and human resources folks were telling us and managers were telling us is, look, I'm putting the 50% down. We've done all of these things, but the individual has to choose to engage. And so one of the big differences here is that we've written this book really focused on the individual as well and how that individual can choose to engage.
That's great. So it's something they can read. They can look at their own engagement, decide, okay, what do I need to do to be more engaged? How do I advance my career, be happier at work, all those kind of things?
Yeah, we've done some interesting studies on this over the last little bit, and one of the things that we found is that if I'm disengaged in this organization, in fact, worldwide, we find about 4 to 5% are fully disengaged in their jobs. All right, these are the people who whether actively or passively are committing sabotage. All right, so they're not giving them their whole selves to the organization. They may show up and they're just a body. They kind of checked out and forgot to tell anybody they retired 3 years ago.
Yeah,
and this is about 4 to 5% of the overall population. What we're finding with that group is that the likelihood of them ever engaging in your organization is only about 10%.
Wow.
So about 10% ever actually engage in that level. The best thing to do is help them disengage in another organization.
Right.
So right. Yet we have this view that, well, I need to help them engage. Well, you really can't. So there's the disengaged individual.
Their minds are made up.
Right. We're also finding through a lot of the research that we've done over the last little bit is that if I disengage in one organization, whether it's fully disengaged or whether I'm just disengaged, the likelihood of me disengaging in the next organization is also extremely high. So we call that the wherever you go, there you are philosophy or theory, right? So I'm disengaged here. I'm going to disengage in another organization. What that tells us is that a lot of my engagement depends on me. And so I need to look inside my own head and discover these 5 keys: meaning, autonomy, growth, impact, and connection. The organization can do some things to help you with, say, meaning, but ultimately I have to find my own meaning in my job. So this is one of the big additions to this book is how do we make sure that I as an individual can create that own level of engagement in myself?
Yeah, so it's not just a personality trait. It's something that can be learned and cultivated.
Yeah, excellent. It is the whole concept that engagement is something that's a competency. I can develop it. I can learn it. I can look for it. I can identify it when it's there, and I can be held accountable for it too.
Great. Well, Tracy, thank you very much. Let me give you some details on when the book would be available. So the release is on January 8th, 2019. That's when the book will be available. Pre-orders are being taken now. So if you go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or any other book retailer, you'll be able to do a pre-order. I want to encourage everyone to check out the new book. Look forward to more content coming from DecisionWise as well as additional podcasts on the same topic. And thanks, Tracy, again for meeting with us today, and thanks everyone for attending.
Thanks, Charles. Appreciate the questions and the opportunity. Take care.